So now it is my great pleasure to turn things over to MoKKa, who is an urban designer in our community working for the city of Amsterdam and with very deep experience working in Berlin as well. And she's going to talk about some of the very, very real-world challenges related to urban planning. Then our Aarhus hosts, Christian and Jeppe, will tell you why they picked the theme Radical City and share some examples of why they've been, how they've been involved with city development and urban activism here in Aarhus. So with that, please welcome MoKKa.
Thanks. Hi. Thanks for having me. I must say, I gave hundreds of presentations in my life so far, but I've never been as nervous as this. So, also because I'm not used to this thingy, and I only have 6 minutes to talk about a theme I've been working on for the past 20 years, and it's hard. It will be a very broad stroke. I'm sorry for any generalizations, and I hope if you're interested, we can talk about this more. The slides. So I want to start with talking about, other way, sorry. Cities, where do cities actually come from? Because cities always have been this weird thing outside of all the other systems. I mean, if you read the Bible, for example, Babylon, Sodom, and Gomorrah were punished by God because they defied his rule. And that's kind of still the case. In the Middle Ages, the cities were outside of the feudal system. And if you could enter a city, if they actually let you live there for a year and a day, you were a free citizen. So you didn't have to serve anyone anymore. You could make your own life within the city system then again. But cities were places of trade for money. There was money for culture. They became very powerful. And they also became proud and magnets for people that were miscontent with everything else, that wanted to find their own niche, to write their own story. That is still the case today. So radical city to me means a place where everybody can find their niche and write their own story. But nowadays, of course, cities are working on a global market. They are connected, they are competing for companies, for money, for tourists, for revenue. And there's still this dream. I can go there and I'll be free of my past and free of the boundaries. But the thresholds have become very, very high, and a lot of people can't enter this dream, or if they enter the city, they get stuck in refugee centers. So this writing my own story is difficult nowadays. Also, cities have always been dependent on their surroundings, because they can't feed themselves, obviously. So like Kronos eating his own children, the cities actually destroy the resources. We need to produce more and more houses, and we eat up the fertile land. Example, Amsterdam. Amsterdam about 10 years ago, wrote a vision for 2040 because cities are slow and very big machines, and we need to think very far ahead. 2040, the city of Amsterdam expects to have more than 1 million inhabitants. That's 200,000 more than now. And they need to build about 100,000 apartments, because people live in smaller groups, they want more space, apartments grow. So everything you see here that's gray is new development or transformation. Because at the same time, what is green should stay green, of course. So it's a struggle for space, and who owns the space becomes the biggest question. In Amsterdam, also during the crisis, they came up with this co-creative city program where they ask all the stakeholders in the city actually about how should the city be. All the stakeholders, they mean the municipality, companies, so big business, education, organized citizens, and unorganized citizens. It's a week every year. It started last year, and I don't think a week is quite enough, because now nothing is happening. No, okay. I'll just talk on and the slides will follow. Yeah, now it does. Because the market is booming. Everybody wants to build in Amsterdam because there's lots of money to be earned. This is what's being built, and it might look nice, but it's very high density, it's very expensive, because of course the city makes the ground value, and not everybody can afford to live here. And those who can afford to live there want to safeguard the value of their property. So public spaces become private spaces. For example, in Berlin, Potsdamer Platz is completely privatized. That means the companies there pay for the maintenance of the public space, but they also decide who's allowed to go there. Jan Geel, a Dane, wrote something about cities for people, where he writes that public space is the lifeblood of the city, and he talks about placemaking, that public spaces need to be beautiful. But actually, what use is a beautiful public space to me if I can't pay the cappuccino that I need to pay to be allowed to stay there? So our cities are burning, and not in a good way. And placemaking, in my experience, is often displace making. So in Berlin, again, a lot of people fight for the city to stay what it is. For example, Neukölln has to keep dirty because ugliness is not gentrifiable, they say. There were 40,000 people on the street demonstrating for the expropriation for housing, because if I can't find a house in the city, it's not my city anymore. So radical city is for me the right to the city. Radical cities are diverse, are full of conflict, and also radical inclusive. And what we need for that, again, it stops. What we need for that is actually public spaces that are really public, and they don't have to be beautiful, but they have to be usable for everybody to write our own stories. And when I see you and I think about myself, I know we are very privileged who are sitting here. We are, most of us, well educated, we are curious, we know how to talk, how to present ourselves, we have connections. We can now make ourselves heard. But most people in the city, does it work now? Yeah. Most people in the city are unheard and are unseen. So, as cool as it is to talk after a prince, I wonder, how can we actually make the homeless heard, or people that don't have the time because they have to work? How can we get people that can't pay for the burns into our bubble? How can we make the burns more inclusive, the cities more inclusive? And that means, again, who makes the rules? A lot of our rules are still from the 50s, so this is from a Bible of architects where everything is measured. So you know how you have to behave in your living room. The woman reads, the man smokes, and you sit in this carefully placed things. But there's a French artist who said, no, we're going to do this, okay? So I could talk about this for hours. As I said, I had to throw out all the examples about how it could work differently. I hope I can talk about that in a workshop tomorrow. But now I give over to Christian, because he knows more.